Good evening, ladies and germs. We are going live again. I'm very excited to be here. We are going to be doing our second part two, our part two of the JonTron Too Long Didn't Watch review. I did promise Christian Valera said I would go live sometime in the next 4 days. I am keeping my promise. You can blame Lycan for me keeping my promise because honestly, I was pretty tired today. So just to share a little bit of parasocial bullshit before we get into the actual stream. I do love my family, but I do have a very busy schedule. So I am presently working 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I expect to take care of my family until 8 p.m., at which point the boys go to bed. Then after that, I expect to work from 8 to 11 on side hustle projects. I have all sorts of crazy side hustle projects. And then I try to go to bed between 11 and midnight, although oftentimes, hello, Zump, hello. Yes, good evening. We started going live again within the past few weeks, or past week and a half, I would say. But we did take 3 weeks off, which I apologize for. But let me continue with my parasocial rant. And then I try to go to bed between 11 and 1 and then wake up at 7 a.m. and do it all over again. So that is pretty hectic schedule. And then on the weekends, on Saturday, I try to dedicate that to the families. Well, their favorite thing to do is go to the pool. So I'm spending 2 hours or 3 hours in the sun swimming with my sons, which is very fun. But as you can imagine, that's quite draining. So I was going to phone it in, but Lycan wanted to test something out and I want to help out. I want to be a helpful person. And not only that, I want to keep my promise to Christian Valera. So we will be reviewing JonTron versus Destiny tonight, part 2. We're already an hour in. We'll be reviewing the last hour to 90 minutes of that because we are going to be hitting the greatest hits of Twitch and YouTube politics. I'm actually really excited to do the N-word debate in a little bit. Oh, that's giving me like a echo feedback. I kind of like that actually. I'm gonna leave that. So, anyways, that's the plan. Now, if you're on YouTube, if you go down into the description, there's going to be a link. Good evening, Sultan Al Fahim. Good to see you again. There's going to be a link for Progressive Victory. Now, I know not all of you are Democrats. I would say a healthy chunk of you are centrists or Republicans or rightoids or dissident right or whatever. But I am going to be shilling this every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes or so, because part of the goal of tonight is testing that Progressive Victory software in order to see if they can get it where the money goes in and then it directs for tax and documentation purposes and FTC guidelines and all that kind of stuff. So I'll probably be donating a little bit tonight. I'll be shilling every 20 minutes, which I know might get annoying, but you're just going to have to deal with me because we have things to accomplish. So without further ado, I'm going to start setting up the Too Long Didn't Read JonTron debate. If you have questions or concerns, go ahead and type them into chat. I appreciate the half dozen of you who are already here. It's beautiful to be alive. It's beautiful to be here with you fine folk tonight. It's beautiful for, I don't know, to be working towards cool projects like the bolter and the chainsaw sword and the flamer and the 3D printing targets and all that kind of stuff. So let's do Destiny JonTron debate. Let's find the one that I'm already an hour into. Looks like we have about an hour left, which is perfect. Let's make sure that I have enough volume. Let me go back to my chat real quick. I am going to... Your Discord pings keep going to your other channel. Well, I'm sorry about that. We're moving everything to Counterfire, so you're going to have to give us some forgiveness and latitude and tech stuff. It wasn't you're not streaming. I've just been so busy over the past 2 years, but I just graduated, so I'm glad to be back in the streaming community. Excellent, Zump. Excellent to hear. So just tell me if you have audio. Oh, no. I need to present. I need to share screen. I need to share screen again. I need to do the JonTron. I need to share. I need to add to stage. Is that an okay layout for Excellent. So let's check the audio on the stream though. So basically the YouTube. Let's check that real quick, and I'll full screen it real quick.
Your ability to assimilate to American culture?
Can y'all hear that?
No, but I mean, why would we have things like Black Lives Matter then?
Because Black people experience a disproportionate amount of problems in the United States, and this is a group that's trying to advocate on behalf of those problems to get them fixed.
Can y'all hear?
I mean, I wish that.
Come on, guys. I need some feedback. Okay, very low. Let's see if I can give you some more then. Destiny looks so different. Destiny is slightly low. Okay, so let's try this again.
Your utopian worldview was the
Do
way
you
it
think
is.
that black people don't experience a
How's that?
disproportionate amount of problems in the United States
I'm sure they face issues.
that are
Yeah,
unique probably to the black community?
I think so. Probably
Okay,
they
so
do.
then that's where then you agree with the existence of Black Lives Matters. That's why they exist, is to advocate
Oh,
on behalf of
no.
these people.
No, that's not. That's not true though. That just because I would agree that they might have a different experience doesn't mean I advocate for Black Lives Matter.
Wait, why? So what do you disagree with?
Their methods, for one.
What is?
Still pretty low. So I'm getting Sultan Al Fahim saying good, and Azriel is saying still pretty low. Christian Valeris is saying good. I'm sorry. This is, if you look down here, YouTube is maxed out. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but my computer is maxed out. It's set to my headphones. So unfortunately, Azriel, my apologies. We'll work on it. Hold on. Let me see if I can turn on recording hotkeys, layouts, audio. The speaker is headset. Mic volume is there. Can I fuck with the audio for that? And I'm sorry, apologies for jumping into tech shit, but you know, we're kind of starting out, you know what I'm saying? So I want to make sure that it's good. Reduce mic background noise, echo cancellation, sure. Automatically adjust mic volume, no. Stereo audio, echo cancellation must be off to use stereo audio. No, none of these, unfortunately. All right, I'm sorry, Kings. You're just gonna have to deal with it. So, anyways, yeah, I haven't really heard much from Samantha Banana. We kind of diverged after some drama that she had with some other people in the community. But you know, I saw her once or twice since then, and we're cool as far as I know. All right, yeah, Azriel, you're gonna have to deal with it. My apologies. Christian Blair says, if you continue with these previous debates, the next one would be Destiny and Hassan versus Fuentes and Sargon. Lol, talk about strange allies giving current realities. True. Not only is that going to be interesting, I can't wait to get to the N-word saga. I'm excited. You're like twice as loud on my end. I can live with it. I'm sorry, King. My bad. All right. Anyways, we're going to suffer. We're going to suffer together. So let's continue. I will choke up a little bit less on my mic so I'm not blasting Azriel's earballs. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to the N-word saga. So let's do a little bit of framing real quick before we get into it. I'm going to pull up my sticky notes so we can track the arguments. And here we go, sticky notes. I've been tracking the arguments for these fine folks. But just a brief summary real quick. JonTron was being charismatic during the beginning of the debate. Destiny had shit-talked him on Twitter in order to get him on the stream. They were talking about Brexit isolationism, the election of Trump. Oh, okay. Brexit isolationism and election of Trump. I was trying to place this within the timeline, and it turns out that it was 2017. That's when this debate took place, which is wild to think about, that the fact that this is now a 7-year-old debate. It's going on a decade. We're all getting old as shit. But JonTron thinks that centrism is cringe, which I think is cringe. He wants to defend Western and American cultural values, which he won't articulate. Destiny believes that this is a shield for majority white demographics, which JonTron doesn't do much to dispel. So I don't want to go through all the details because I feel like they'll be lost and I should write a script for it. But that is the setting for this, is JonTron wants to defend Western cultural hegemony. He does believe that whites in America have a right to defend their demographic majority within the United States. He does some 4chan talking points without, I would say, much research. And then Destiny pushes back on that using his liberal globe mentality. So without further ado, let's get into the content.
Is their methods? Are you talking about the most extreme rioting that you have seen, like on certain conservative media outlets, or are you talking about the general group altogether?
I didn't see them on conservative media outlets. I saw them with my eyes. What are you talking about? It still happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you know,
should
the
we
riots
ban?
for
Do we
one.
need? Do you support hockey players or any kind of athletic event? Because people that are into athletic events riot.
Okay, I think this is so cucked of Destiny, but we also have to give him the benefit of hindsight that he was swimming in the liberal morass. So I'm just going to write this down real quick. Black Lives Matter. Destiny supports it because Black people have historical grievances, unique historical grievances that have to be addressed. And the rioting is not the point. JonTron says with his own eyes, he's seen it be toxic and destructive. And what's hilarious about this in retrospect is that while Destiny has the purest of intentions trying to steelman the Black Lives Matter position, which was probably needed on the internet at the time, it's actually the skeptics who were ultimately vindicated, because a whole bunch of Black Lives Matter chapters have folded since then. A bunch of them have been accused of fraud. A bunch of them have been accused of nepotism, basically like fleecing all the donations and funneling it to family members. And as a movement, because of that distrust and because of the summer of love of 2020, with all the riots and the damage and the fires and all that kind of crap, I would say BLM is largely defunct at this point, which is really interesting looking back on this, that Destiny is trying to steelman it, but JonTron ultimately ended up being vindicated. So anyways, let's continue.
Right, sometimes when their team loses as well.
I absolutely disavow all that kind of violence, but the
Okay,
Black
and there are
Lives
a lot
Matter
of
movement doesn't disavow violence.
there are a lot of BLM people that disavow violence. Of course there are. If you've ever watched any of the actual demonstrations, you'll find tons of people walking around with cameras talking about not starting up shit, watch out for agitators, don't live it. There are tons of black people that don't think that they need to go and riot and be violent. That's definitely a thing.
I'm sure that that's true, but I have seen most of the mainstream stuff that I've seen hasn't really disavowed that kind of stuff. But that's just my opinion. That's one man's opinion. Take it as you will.
Okay, but you don't disagree with maybe the existence of BLM as a thing to address, things that Black Americans might feel, disproportionately impacts them in the United States? Like, it doesn't seem to be like the worst idea in the world.
Well, I mean, but they don't actually want to talk about what's causing Black lives in America to be affected, which is
oh no, JonTron!
Black males.
Okay, what's the problem with young black males?
Well, they commit a disproportionate amount of crime in the country, and
Why
mostly
do you think
against each other.
Why do they commit a disproportionate amount of crime?
Well, we can go into that forever, and I don't really want to go into it.
So people like you are why BLM exists. What you just said was like so mind-numbingly like arrogant. Like, do you think they just do it because they're black? Because the Negroid skull like predisposes them to crime? Well, then why did you laugh when I asked you that?
Because I don't want to go. I don't want to incriminate myself, and because I'm not.
Why are
really
you so
qualified.
scared of saying something that's going to come off as racist? Don't you think that's a little bit predictive of?
You're like going on a what's one of those talk shows where they try to trap you?
Do you feel like you're being?
You should go on CNN, dude. You should work for CNN.
True. Isn't that fantastic foreshadowing for Destiny's current mainstream arc? I kind of love it.
The problem is young black men in the United States are disproportionately born to single mother households, which is a leading indicator of crime. They're also disproportionately born into ghettos and low-income housing areas. They have access to worse education, okay? They're born into horrible socioeconomic conditions. All of these things are massive contributors to being a criminal as you grow up. When you control
But you are making the argument that it's like white people that put them in those situations.
Because they kind of sort of did over the past like 200 years. They kind of brought them over as slaves. They kind of bred them a certain way. They kind of, redlined them and gentrified them out of certain neighborhoods and certain communities. They kind of legally discriminated on them and put them all in certain areas for a long time. They kind of disproportionately policed them and sentenced them to higher crimes in the courts and whatnot. Like, white people have contributed a lot to this.
So I suppose that's why the crime rates are pretty consistent across Africa too.
We're not talking about Africa. We're talking about the United States.
We're never talking about anything with you.
We're always talking about the United States. It seems like every time I have a point about the U.S., you want to go and move to another continent.
No, because oh man. You are not living in reality.
What? I'm not like, can you name 5 countries in Africa?
Yeah, of course I can name 5 countries in Africa.
Do it.
South Africa, Ethiopia,
okay,
Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Zaire.
All right, you got it. You did it. Okay.
I
don't know why going to Africa to talk about their problems is somehow like a valid indicator of things going on in the United States.
Look. This is ultimately, I feel like you're trying to catch me in some sort of racist gotcha.
I'm not trying to catch you. Why do you feel that?
He is, but that's because JonTron absolutely believes those things. So hold on. So this is something that was prevalent in part 1. If you haven't watched part 1, it's on the channel. Go ahead and watch it later. It is really stinking good, I think. And also, so let's get into what Destiny has said so far. So Black Lives Matter matters. It's a good thing. It's to deal with the unique historical grievances. Rioting is not the point. BLM does have plenty of members who disavow violence. So JonTron responds. With his own eyes, he's seen the toxic and destructive nature of BLM, and also the the summer of love and the destruction and the vandalism and all that kind of stuff. JonTron has seen the apologia for the violence and the vandalism. I frankly think that if you were on the internet for the past decade, you probably saw that. And the main meme that came from that era was the fiery but mostly peaceful protests. And it's like a CNN anchor with a microphone, and he's like talking about how peaceful everything is while there's literally a building behind him that's on fire. That's like the meme that is most illustrative of like the mass media gaslighting that was happening at this time. But all of that being said, JonTron says, well, if Black Lives Matter cared about Black lives, then they would be talking about the problem with his young Black males. And that's actually interesting because Destiny uses that. This is part of what was really interesting about this time, because Vosh and Destiny were birds of a feather on this talking point, and I felt like it was a decent talking point, which was the fact that there are environmental reasons for why there's disproportionate crime rates. And so as a result, Black Lives Matter is specifically designed in order to deal with those disproportionate environmental factors. Now, JonTron does have a rebuttal, but he's not willing to bite down on it, which is, if there is a unique African-American history that goes along with young Black male crime rates in the United States of America, why do you see similar crime rates or even worse crime rates in West Africa and Africa? And if Destiny dodges, he really does. Like, if I was in this conversation and I was taking up JonTron's perspective, hey, good evening, Jonah boy, happy to see you. So if I was debating Destiny and I was in JonTron's perspective, I would see this as a dodge. I would see this as slippery, because this is not addressing the fact that you have, similar issues in West Africa. Why would you have that if we're talking about two disparate populations? Now, if Destiny, one of his weakest gaps that I think he has shored up recently is historical knowledge. And so as a result, if you were a historically minded person, then you could talk about colonialism. You could talk about European cultural and economic influence in West Africa. You could talk about like religious, colonialism. You could talk about the way that resources were distributed and kind of pilfered from the continent. You could also talk about the slave kingdoms in West Africa and how they were founded and incentivized by Arab and European slave trades. And so if you were a historical guru, you could jump in with JonTron and say, well, there's a bunch of environmental factors over there that we equally need to address. But because Destiny is uncomfortable, he just pivots, and instead he does the name 5 countries, and actually JonTron does a decent job. Now, there's something that I think is really funny that we need to point out, though, is that JonTron names South Africa. Africa's in the name. I think that's a little bit cheating. Ethiopia, we all know Ethiopian runners, so I feel like that's cheating a little bit. Zimbabwe, that's not cheating. I think that's decent. Like, knowing that Zimbabwe and Zaire are countries in Africa, I think that's decent. And then Nigeria, that's another famous African country. Now, not knowing shit about Africa, like, I don't know shit about Africa. I took one history class about Africa. So I think it's actually impressive that on the fly, JonTron was able to drop 5 names with pressure. So all in all, like, a lot of people have talked a lot of mad shit about JonTron in this debate. I actually feel like he was more competent than a lot of people give him credit for. But yeah. Let's continue.
That way.
It's because I am not saying that the country needs to be 100% white. I'm not saying that Black people are not as good as white people. I'm not saying brown people aren't as good as white people.
So then why don't you want to address, when I ask you, why do you think young black men commit more crime than white people?
Well,
why are you scared to answer that?
Well, because, it's a taboo subject.
How is it taboo? None
way,
of the things that I just said are taboo. What else is there to discuss?
Because look, here's what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that if you're asking John, the human being, what is it that you would like? I would like every person to have the best possible life on the planet. That's genuinely what I want. Now, to what degree we can do that that's the separate question.
Yeah,
so,
but in order to figure out how much we can do it, we have to identify the causes of the problems, because until we've remedied the causes of the problems themselves
Right.
won't be fixed.
But
So
we've been hearing this single motherhood thing for decades, and it's getting a bit tired. I think that's why you're seeing this rise in all these quote unquote Nazis that you're seeing, that everyone's seeing everywhere. Like they took acid and they're seeing bugs crawling out of the woodwork or something.
wait, so what do you think is the reason why young black men disproportionately commit crime in the United
Well,
States?
at this point, it doesn't really matter. All the
But
people
then
know
how do we fix it? Do we just kill them all or deport them all?
No, of course, kill them all. You see, perhaps you're the one with the depraved mind. Because why
trying
are
to
you even
figure out-
going to kill them
I'm
all?
trying to
Why
figure
do you
out-
go there? Because on some level, is that what you want? I mean, why the fuck you say
Because
kill them?
you're not leaving me any options, John. You're
Oh, I'm
saying
not leaving it. They commit more crime. Kill them all.
you're
You haven't
literally
let-
saying they commit more crime. I don't know why they do it. Fuck it. We can't do anything to fix it. That's what you're saying. So what's the solution then? You have no
I'm not
solutions.
saying that. I'm just saying when white people are aggressed against in their own nations by people who are not white, and they're told constantly, check your privilege, you colonized us, you owe us this land, blah 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 blah. You heard it all.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about identifying root causes of problems in the black community and trying to fix and remedy those problems.
You're just going off on tangents, dude. Look, there's one thing I came here to talk to you about. Why is it bad for white people to resist their own demographic displacement? That is the only thing I'm here to discuss.
And your
with
only
you.
answer was
I made my
tribalism.
point. What?
And your only answer was tribalism.
No, I explained other things as well. When people, let's say the French see an influx of Islamic migrants who come in and say, you don't give us good enough handouts, you're being racist to us, and then they're rioting. What are the French supposed to think exactly? They're supposed
I don't
to think
know.
more
I'm
of
not French. I'm American. We were talking about
It's
America.
all-
Why are we going about again?
all intertwined. It's the same situation, but they speak a different language. I don't know why this is so hard for you.
Because it's not the same situation. Those countries are in dramatically different situations. You can't compare them.
That's like you're saying a man ate a sandwich in France and a man ate a sandwich in America, but these are not the same situations.
We're not talking about a basic thing like eating and consuming food. We're talking about the complex interaction and crossroads between culture and demographics and economy and geography. These are very complicated, high-level social issues that manifest themselves in far different ways across different countries. We're not just talking about eating food.
You speak pretty, my friend, but you haven't convinced me. I don't know if you may have convinced your viewers. I think they're probably on your side, but that's what happens when you go off home turf. Look, you can speak flowery language about all this stuff, but you bring up, you bring up the Irish and the Italians when it's convenient. But
what do you mean when it's convenient? I brought up the Irish Italians to disprove your points about tribalism, that at one point in time, they weren't seen as being included as Americans or white people, and now they are. So it seems like we got over
This is not true that they weren't considered white people.
It is absolutely true. Please, okay, just make me promise one thing. If I haven't changed your mind on anything else, please go read a little bit about early struggles of immigrants and fucking Ellis Island and all that shit, because this was a very real thing in the United States. You have, before you talk, because people will catch you on this in the future if they try to do gotcha moments, you absolutely need to read a little bit about this, okay? Irish people and plenty of other immigrants around the late 1800s, early 1900s in the United States experienced a ton of discrimination, racial discrimination. All right, you have to just look into this, okay? Even if you don't agree with me now.
Look, I know that there was some discrimination there, and by the way, yeah, it's wrong. Discrimination is wrong. We have gotten rid of discrimination in our Western countries.
What do you?
Fine.
What? No, we haven't. What do you mean?
If you don't think we've gotten rid of discrimination, you're living in a fantasy land. And
how do you explain things like the voter ID laws in North Carolina, or how do you?
Bro, what voter ID laws in North? Get out of here with that.
What? Right. Get out of here with what?
Oh no!
Like me, are supposed to listen to people like you chatter on about this oppression in America. It doesn't exist, dude. It doesn't exist. There's
what are you
oppression.
talking about? You don't think that there's any oppression in any part of the United States against any group of people ever?
What do you want to do? Police people's thoughts by law?
No. How about their actions?
We do that. It's called having a police force. Something that Somalia doesn't really have much of. So, what's your point?
I'm not sure. All right. Well, listen, dude.
That's what I think you are correct on that. I think you aren't sure.
No, I mean, I know exactly what I'm talking about, but I feel like I don't. I mean, if you don't think that anybody experiences any disproportionate oppression or any kind of issues in any parts of the United States,
sure they do. but we can't take on all the world's problems at once.
Well,
Gotta
I'm
take
the
it
one that
at a
just
time.
wants to talk about the United States.
I maintain that the United States and Europe are interconnected, at least spiritually. So I don't know why that's controversial to say. I really don't understand it.
I would highly encourage you to talk to Europeans then, I guess, or talk to your parents, because they will tell you completely different things. Countries in Europe do not all what?
I guess you know what my parents think then.
Your parents are from the Middle East, correct? Or what did you say? One was from Iran? Ask him how similar Iran is to Iraq, or how similar Iran is to Israel, or how similar Iran is to even Saudi Arabia or the Gulf states. He's not going to tell you that, oh, it's all in the Middle East, right? Would your dad say that?
Of course not. And I've been to Iran, so I don't know if you've ever
based?
been outside your house. But
okay, so if you took a guy from Iran,
All right, hold on. We're going to pause because it feels like they're going to tangent into something else. So, JonTron says it doesn't have to be 100% white. Brown and black people are not uniquely evil, and so he's not this like caricature of like a white nationalist that Destiny seems to be prodding him towards. And so Destiny presses on that and basically says like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to kill them all? Do you want to deport them all? And JonTron says, of course not. But I think that whites, this is going back to the previous debate, if brown people and black people through progressive politics are always going to be catered to along their identity lines, then why is it unfair for whites to identify along their identity lines and then advocating their self-interest by limiting immigration? That's basically his question. And so if it was like limits to immigration, then this is the interesting thing about 2016, 2017. So if JonTron is saying secure the border, no more other people, maintain a white majority, et cetera, it's going to be treated as if he's saying, let's murder everyone, let's slaughter them all, let's kick them all out, et cetera. And obviously there's like a wide berth of a wide spectrum of policy between these positions. And as a matter of fact, I would say that Americans probably through, I would say even the 80s, even the 90s, if you ask them this position, it would be like borderline presumed. And that's because I think through 1980, the country was 85% white. And it was really only since I think it's the Hart-Celler Act, it's only since 1965 that we started taking immigration from other countries that were not majority European more aggressively. And as a result, the demographic makeup of the country has changed substantively in the past like 50 to 70 years. And so that's JonTron's posit. It actually goes back to something that Nick Fuentes has said in the past. I don't know how much he sticks by this phrase now, but one of the things that he says is race is not everything, but it's not nothing. And so when people try to hit him with like, well, he does say some wild shit about Hitler and Stalin and all that kind of stuff. So I think he deserves all the criticism that he gets. However, back in the day when he was more optically minded and back in the day when he was trying to be more moderate, he would say things like, race isn't everything, but it's not nothing. So, I think that JonTron, if you asked him at this time, this is kind of like a speculation on my point, but I think that he would probably have a libertarian solution. He would probably say like, oh, well, I don't want my taxes going to this, that, the other, and I want people to be able to self-segregate. So he would want no more, new people coming into the country, and then he would want brown, black, white, Asian, whatever, to be able to self-segregate along tribalist lines. That way, everybody can live in their own separate but equal communes. Then, which is actually technically a libertarian perspective, because you're not trying to use the force of the state to force anybody to associate with anybody else. You assume that naturally they're going to do that kind of stuff. So Destiny is really good at jumping from his strengths to his weaknesses, or from his weaknesses to his strengths, which I think is evidenced by the French analogy. So JonTron brings up like, well, do the French have to tolerate Arab Muslims and people from the Middle East and North Africa immigrating to their countries, not assimilating to their culture, and then complaining about the quality of their benefits? Shouldn't they just be able to deport them all? And Destiny goes, oh, well, I'm not talking about France. I'm just talking about America, and these things aren't analogous. Well, they kind of are. And again, I think that this is Destiny not feeling strong on geopolitics or history from other countries. And as a result, he jumps from his weakness to his strength. And he goes back to what's happening in the United States specifically. Finally, I don't want to say finally, because I think I'm missing some stuff in there. But JonTron says we've gotten rid of discrimination largely in Western countries, and Destiny rebuts with, well, there's voter ID laws in North Carolina. the reason why this is like a decent rebuttal, and I saw Bud123 saying like ID laws are not racist. Trust me, I'm going to thread the centrist needle on this. So if you hear something you don't like, just trust me, we'll get there. I promise. But when you're talking about the voter ID laws in North Carolina, what happened was allegedly the Republican lawmakers specifically looked at the kinds of IDs that black voters were using, and then they specifically excluded those kinds of IDs, disproportionately screwing over, poor whites who are going to vote Democrat, but also blacks. And so as a result, I think that in the court case overhearing this stuff, they actually either partially struck down the law or struck down the law because it was so targeted that it was obvious. Now, I don't think that voter ID laws are inherently racist. As a matter of fact, I think that if you're going to show your ID for alcohol, for cigarettes, to get into the movie theater, all that kind of stuff, then you should absolutely be forced to show an ID in order to vote. However, what I would do as a compromise is when you turn 18, you should either get a federal or state ID issued to you that has some kind of identification number with your name, date of birth, and most recent address, and that should be issued to you for free. And it should be a photo ID. So for me, like, it's more about solidifying the truth of the process rather than doing a bare minimum test to see who's not lazy enough to go get an ID. Reason being is because voting is a right in this country. I kind of wish it wasn't. I kind of wish that we went to like you have to earn the franchise kind of thing. But if we're going to have it that way, then we shouldn't be screwing people over. And I'm going to check. Isn't the answer free voter ID? It sure is. Moscow rich kid. You and I are of the same brain. At Counterfire, what makes JonTron's position especially weird is that he's fixating on black people, but the proportion of black people has barely gone up at all since 1900. Yeah, Replicator, I think that that's accurate. I think that the main thing that's really going on, the reason why he's bringing up black folk is because of disproportionate crime statistics. So it actually really doesn't have much to do with immigration. But of course, this was during 2017, this was in the wake of the Bataclan and the truck attacks and Pulse nightclub and all that kind of stuff. So the fear was not just quote unquote black criminality, but also jihadist Islamist terrorism. Now, disproportionately, that affected Europe over the United States. But, Hillary Clinton was promising to bring in like 200,000 Syrians over the course of like 2 or 3 years. So, that's part of the reason why, I'm potentially voting for Biden this cycle. That's part of the reason why I couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, because I'm not gonna get done with the war on terror where I see jihadist terrorist attacks and I see what's going on in the Middle East and North Africa, and then you have somebody who's just like, yeah, sure, we're gonna bring him in a few 100,000 at a time. Like, I know you can't screen people that well, so no, I'm not gonna vote for jihadist attacks. That's fucking crazy. So that's part of the reason why. Also, the whole like baby eating thing, and also, your husband hanging out with a pedophile named Jeffrey Epstein. That whole thing, while that wasn't as big at the time, that was another reason why I wasn't going to go with Hillary Clinton, because I assumed that she ate babies and that Bill Clinton fucked underage prostitutes. So, managed democracy is the real democracy. I agree wholeheartedly. 100%, Jonah Boy. Thank you kindly. No taxation without representation. I agree. Why should someone in a free country be obligated to let the government keep their photo? I would say XNV. They shouldn't be compelled to have somebody take their photo. However, if you want to vote, if you want to exercise your franchise, then I think you should have your photo taken. If you had to be veteran to vote, that means they could discriminate on who votes. I mean, yeah, but I think we should discriminate on who votes. I just think we should pick on our discrimination. Bum number 1 for 10 Rona. I'm not sure what that dollars are. Your ID example is literally a thing in Europe. Very based. What's wrong with eating babies? Done king shame. Fuck you guys. Anyways. But Biden is a sexual assaulter. Moscow child. I'm just going to rebut you, but I'm not trying to be rude because we agreed a few seconds ago. So Joe Biden has sniffed women and sniffed children and allegedly, groped some people in the 80s. Donald Trump also was throwing wild parties in the 80s and 90s in which he probably banged underage prostitutes with Jeffrey Epstein. Him and Jeffrey Epstein were boys. That Donald Trump even publicly commented on the fact that Jeffrey likes his girls a little bit on the young side. And then what happened was they got into beef in the 90s, and then they broke up and stopped hanging out together. So for me, if you're going to throw like Biden's a child molester or whatever, I can throw that just as easily back at Donald Trump, because he definitely did some wild shit when in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, we didn't have fucking cell phone cameras. We didn't have security cameras. You think Donald Trump wasn't doing coke and banging underage prostitutes in the 80s and 90s? If you don't believe that, then you're fucking coping. Anyways, so speaking of pissing off my right-wing and centrist political audience, we might as well get into it while we're at it. So there is a link down in the description. I'm going to go post it in chat. I'm going to make sure that it actually popped up. I'm going to turn off the volume real quick. Here it is. So here is the donation link. If you actually look down at it, if you are a Democrat, if you are a Democrat lurker, if you are a progressive lurker, or if you are an anti-Trump Republican, this is a dono link to Progressive Victory. I know it says progressive, but I promise that only a quarter of them are communists. 3/4 of them are liberal Democrats. They are doing canvassing houses, and the canvassing houses are going out and knocking doors and doing all the shit that needs to be done in order to actually win the election. So if you are not a fan of Trump, then go ahead and click on that link, do $1, $5, $10, whatever. Go ahead and do a donation, because we are actually trying to test the system so it properly registers all of the money. So what I'm going to do, just so you guys are not alone, I am going to go do a donation as well to test the system. So my Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans don't feel alone. Complete. And sorry, you're just gonna have to listen to dead air for a second, because this shill. I'm gonna type in twat. Allegedly, if you do over $10, it'll do voice to text. But I think because I'm doing this on StreamYard instead of OBS, it might not. So, self YouTuber donate. And my message is twat. Leave note. I'm not leaving a tip. Are you kidding me? Why would I leave a tip? I'm donating. These fucking Democrats. Finish. Okay, cool. So I donated Christian Valeris. You hate it? Oh, that's kind of based. That's kind of based. Christian Valeris says, I fucking hate Trump, but I ain't helping progressives who legit want an assault weapons ban and get rid of stand your ground, which means no money for Progressive Victory for me. Hey, listen, I thought you were a guaranteed sell, but apparently not, all right? So I did my part, okay? If you want to shill, shill. If you don't want to shill, don't shill. All right, cool. Let's continue.
You've been there, right? If you take a guy, an Iranian, and you put him aside a Saudi Arabian, do you think that these people would identify as both being, yeah, we're both Middle Eastern?
No, Iranians and Saudi Arabians are very different. But what's your point? So then that's a good argument for Saudi Arabians not to occupy Iran, isn't it?
No, I'm just saying that these people don't all identify as being the same, even though they're from a similar region, much the same way that Europeans don't identify as being European.
Yes, but would you argue that a Turk and an Iranian are going to be able to assimilate to one's culture easier than a Hungarian and a Romanian? Or those two would be able to assimilate easier than the other way around? I mean,
I mean, it really depends on the reasons for moving. It depends on the situation. Like, I don't know. I'm not talking about their ability to integrate. I'm just talking about how people identify themselves. You're telling me that I don't understand, I guess, anything about the world, and you're very quick to lump like all Europeans in together with one another, when I don't think there are any Europeans that would do that.
You're differentiating between people when it's convenient, like when it's in Iran or Saudi Arabia, but when it comes to white countries, there's no difference. We have no culture. It's just all up for grabs. So it's one or the other. And people like you you just bounce around when it's convenient for you. That's why your arguments aren't rooted in any sort of consistency or fact.
See, this is actually a rhetorical mistake that I think JonTron is making. White people don't exist / don't have a culture. We watched this part 1 together earlier, and not today, but just earlier. And if you want to check the VOD, check the VOD. However, Destiny has not said this the entire debate. And when you're debating Destiny, you have to debate him specifically. You can't be bringing in exterior shit unless he's willing to deal with it. And then what I would say on Destiny's part, so JonTron asks very pointedly, can parallel cultures integrate easier than non-parallel cultures? And Destiny doesn't concede the point. And I kind of want to point this out because this is something that's going to happen over and over again. And it's not like, it's not a dig at what Destiny does. As a matter of fact, it's part of the reason why he's so good at what he does. So when it comes to debate, I would say that there's two styles of debate, or at least two styles that I see that are fairly easy. There's debating to win, and there's debating to understand. And I think that Destiny, particularly in some cases, he debates to win, which means that he shores up his facts, he makes sure that they're solid, he follows a logic chain, he'll have a backup logic chain if his first logic chain falls apart. He will return from his points of weakness to his points of strength, and he will force the person that he's debating to move from their points of strength to their points of weakness. It's actually wildly intelligent, and you have to track what's being said in order to understand it all. Whereas what I like to do is because I'm Irish, I like to run into battle naked with nothing but my emotions and instincts and my previous experience and knowledge and my earnestly held beliefs. And then I just like to scream that at the other party, and I like the other party to scream their perspective back at me. And then between the two perspectives smashing together over and over and over again, maybe we can come to some kind of like consensus about reality. And so that's where, for me, I think that you can admire Destiny's rhetorical gifts while still seeing the way the game works. And that is why Destiny is a wildly famous debater, and I am a 30 viewer Andy shilling for Democrats on a Saturday night. So anyways. Bum number one does not like this rhetorical strategy. I noticed that. Some people, man, I got a lot of like no voters. I got a lot of Republicans who don't like Trump but who aren't voting, and I got a lot of Democrats who don't like progressives. So that's kind of brutal. But anyways, I'm doing my part. Okay. Doesn't Destiny say now that the U.S. is uniquely non-racial in its national character, but European countries may have a more legitimate claim to white character worth preserving? If he hasn't said that specifically, I'm assuming that he could land somewhere there. But if you land on white character, he probably won't, concede that, but he'll probably concede to like a historical argument. Dialectical autism, indeed. That's how your ancestors lost to the British. Yes, but we had a lot of fun doing it. A particle accelerator for autistic screeching of beliefs. Exactly. Oh, man. Okay. Let's continue.
All right. I understand. Do you have any? I'll give you the closing words if you want. We're already way past. I think you.
No, nothing. I genuinely appreciate you.
It still goes on for 40 minutes.
If I'd love to be proven wrong. No, thanks for at least having the balls to talk about what you believe in.
Sure, I appreciate it. Yeah, same to you. It's always nice to have a conversation with someone I disagree with. So, good luck with your endeavors and everything.
You too, man. Hey, thank you for having me on. And rip my career. All right, see you guys.
Oh, that was cute.
Oh, dudes. Fucking end my life.
No, that was cute. That was fun.
That would be.
I don't know how you can't like JonTron more at the end of that.
Like that. I'm sorry.
First time actually listening to you debate. Was shocked to see how difficult it was. You try your hardest to maintain a worldview and the other person just goes nuts in the wind. Made me appreciate you more. Great job, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Oh, that's cute. Will I ever do Way of the Gun Part 2? Yeah, so just to share, just because bum number one asked, right now we're obviously focusing on 40K. 40K is our breadwinner. We actually took a slump. We took like a 40% hit when we unlisted some of those old reactions just because they got so many views and they had so much momentum behind them. But the Bolter video and the new artifacts episode actually rebounded us. So we went from like, you know, unlisted videos 40% slump to Bolter and artifacts like slingshotting us back into our previous position. So I'm actually pretty excited because we'll finish up with the couple of Hammer Bolter episodes, then we'll go into the expanded universe. But obviously the point is to get Counterpoints 40K up to 100K subs. The point is also to be more active on the politics side. Unfortunately, so Brianna and I on a drama episode, we pulled 100 viewers cross-platform. Unfortunately, with my shallow charisma on a Saturday night, on a 7-year-old debate, we're pulling 35 cross-platform. But I parasocially love you for being here and thank you kindly. If you do have dollar dues, give it to PV in the link below. That way we can do the testing of the stream system. But the game plan is to eventually, I'm hoping by maybe beginning of 2025, depending on the metrics, but more realistically, summer of 2025. Summer of 2025, I should be able to go full-time-ish, and then I can do reviews. So I'll have Counterpoints 40K, which will be science fiction. I will have Counter Fire, which will be political debate. I'll have Counterpoints, which will be political essays, which I am working on in the background, I promise. And then I'll have Counter Reviews, which will be the content that doesn't really fit into any other category. So yes, but you're going to have to wait a year, literally. All right. Sorry, let's continue with the content so I'm not just shilling for myself.
Oh no, he was retarded, da fellas.
Dude, I don't know, fam. I need a minute to decompress. Oh my god, I can't do it.
I'm going to feel bad for you when the YouTube comments on this video all consist of wow, SJWS Tiny got fucking destroyed.
They
Bonus
will
meme,
too,
IE.
They will, dude.
I'm gonna let it flow.
Holy shit, JonTron absolutely destroyed Destiny in that debate. Get blow the fuck out, USJW cuck.
Rip.
Maybe get out
Rip.
of your house for once instead of being shit in
Oh,
league
I
with
can't
Draven
believe-
Kid.
Oh.
Also gashigasm.
If there's one thing that I've learned as an
I'll do
ignorant
Generation
American
Kill
bloggers around the world
next year
for
when
my
we're
time that I
full-time.
spent in Europe, don't call Europeans Europeans. I don't think they like that generally. I don't think it doesn't seem that Polish people or Italians or French or Germans will call them yes, I'm a European. I'm a European. It doesn't seem to be. I could be wrong on that, but I've never met somebody from any of these countries that does
Discrimination
that.
doesn't exist in the United States anymore. That's why I advocate for discrimination against dark-skinned immigrants to preserve the white majority in the United States.
Hold on. I don't just want to listen to chat messages, so we might literally jump to a different debate. Let's see if anybody else jumps on.
I didn't even want to go into a tweet, and I don't think that.
Think it's a legitimate.
Oh shit. To shortly answer it, people can come to the United States and adopt the United States way of life. Let me check. I might be wrong on this. According to 20, because you're probably my fucking monthly paycheck.
All right, sorry. We're gonna get into other content. I didn't know that it was gonna end 20 minutes into the review. So they don't. It's all donos. Okay. Oh fuck it. Then we'll move on to new content.